on this episode of The Naked Entrepreneur.
So while Matt was in Austria at this winter market, he ate this thing, he loved it, and he ends up taking like a 3-minute video of how they're doing it. They're juggling they're rolling out these things and snaking it around a wooden spindle and rolling it out. And so he sends me this video with one message. It just says, "We're doing this." The biggest thing that I always say is don't look for what's glamorous. Because what's glamorous or what's the flavor of the month, it usually sizzles out pretty quick. We were going to different events, we were looking at the profiles of the people that were coming in, we were making a lot of decisions based on that. A lot of people say, oh, you got a food truck business. I said, no, I have a food business that started on a truck.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly how we played it. The truck was for proof of concept.
Welcome to The Naked Entrepreneur. I'm Dr. Sean Wise, and today I'm joined by Zach Fiksel, consultant, content creator, brand strategist, and co-owner and founder of Chimney Stax Baking Company. Chimney Stax was founded in 2014 by Ryerson MBA graduates Matt Lindzon and Zach Fiksel, and has since expanded from a single food truck to various locations across the GTA. Earlier this year, Chimney Stax Baking Co. was successfully acquired by Eva's Original Chimneys, and now they'll be working together to continue the growth of the Chimney Stax and Eva's products. Featured on the Food Network, CBC's Dragon's Den, and several local and national newspapers and magazines, Chimney Stax revenue tripled from its first to second years and then doubled from its second to third years. In the 12 months before they pitched the Dragons on Dragon's Den, they were only operating for 90 days, but they made $160,000 in revenue. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for pumping my tires a little bit.
The truth is the truth. Where did your interest in entrepreneurship start?
I think I was always the type of guy that I never really got institutionalized well in my working life, even from when I was very young. So I was always kind of hacking my own path with things, and in my teen years I started getting interested in production and film and video and stuff like that. So I was in high school doing bar mitzvah videos and wedding videos and stuff like that, and it was Zach Fiksel Inc. kind of thing, and sort of I was always sort of operating independently and doing things my own way. I also don't like really being told what to do very often. So as you get older, you realize that that's not as much of a deal, a big a deal. But when you're younger, you kind of want to do your own thing. And I think that's sort of how it started.
Now, after your experience in the video and media fields, you went back to Ryerson for an MBA. Why did you think that was a good move back then?
Great question. So 90% of my business was corporate work. So, I was dabbling in broadcast and doing some things like that. But the meat and potatoes of my revenue stream was doing service work for corporations. So GE Healthcare did do a bunch of videos for them, or RBC for their annual general meeting. We do a video for them and stuff like that. And then 2008 hit. And everybody took a hit. And
so there was a massive recession in 2008. A lot of corporations decided to double down on their core focus and pull back on their shiny stuff.
Exactly. Royal Bank didn't need to spend $12,000 on a video in 2008 to pump their own tires to their shareholders. So I didn't lose the work to someone else. It just, the work went away. And then as things slowly recovered, a lot of clients, I was calling them back and they're like, you know what? It's been 2 years and no one misses the videos. No offense, we're not coming back to it. So I needed a change. I wanted a change, and I realized that Lucas wasn't calling me up to direct episode 7, 8, or 9. So it was maybe a refocus is something to do. And then I found out that if you put your head down and do the work, you can actually do an MBA in 12, 13 months and get back out there. So that made a lot of sense to me. I didn't want to be out of the game for too long. I didn't want to not be earning too long. And I also didn't want to do a part-time degree. I know what I'm like. If there's an assignment due and then there's like some service work for a client to do, the schoolwork ain't getting done. And so I knew that I would sort of, in a part-time role, I would be indefinitely in school. So put my head down, wrote the GMATs, got in, did all the undergrad prerequisites that I didn't have over the summer in like 6 weeks, and then started at Ted Rogers.
So what were you hoping to get from 12 months of MBA? Were you hoping it would open your eyes to new opportunities? Were you looking to wait out the recession? Were you looking to be inspired?
You want to know the irony of the whole thing?
Please.
As I was thinking, maybe I go and do this, and then I join a company and stop being an entrepreneur.
But yet that's not what happens, right? You go and you decide, not only am I busy doing a 2-year MBA in 12 months, not only am I in the heart of downtown Toronto, working at a newer MBA school, top 10, but I'm going to start a business. That was or wasn't your plan when you went in?
It was totally not the plan. It's actually kind of funny how it all sort of came together.
Well, it is, because if I remember correctly, we've heard from a lot of our guests, John Sleeman, Bruce Poon-Tip, that travel had an impact, because when they were abroad, they saw things differently. But if I'm not mistaken, travel had a huge impact while you were in MBA school, you and your partner. I don't know if you were on the trip.
No, yeah. So my business partner to be at the time is Matt Lindzon. We found each other at the front row of finance class. We were
Where the smart kids sit.
Either the smart kids or the guys that really knew that they needed to pay attention and extract as much value as they could. And we ended up sort of working together on a few group things and found that we yin and yanged very effectively. There's, of course, a tremendous amount of overlap of skills, but there was also a lot where we complemented each other. So that was a very healthy relationship. And once MBA ended, we both sort of went our separate ways, but we were actually working about 3 blocks from each other. So we'd meet for lunch once a week and, shoot the breeze and talk about what's going on with our respective sort of placements post MBA. When we were both miserable. I think it's the best way to say it.
So you finished the MBA, you got the dream, you got that corporate opportunity. I don't want to go into detail because we're going to slander it, but it wasn't what you were comfortable with.
I'm not going to name the company, but I was working for sort of a boutique agency doing creative services, and I was very unhappy with the operation. That's the other thing about sort of coming from an entrepreneur and then working for a business, is that it's really hard to keep your head down and just do your job when you see that there's things not being done right. And maybe if you're in a big company, they want to listen to you, but I was in a smaller firm. There were only like 13, 14 of us, and I don't think the head of that company really wanted to be told how to do anything differently. So my perspective was not particularly appreciated, and of course that led me to think, like, if I can do it better myself, why am I doing this? So sort of unhappy where I was and looking to make a move. And during that time, Matt, who was in the clothing business, he was doing really interesting stuff, actually bringing in base layers like long underwear and stuff like that. Doesn't seem like a glamorous business, but it's a very good business.
But the merino wool business has really taken off. The whole base layer business has become key, especially in places like Canada.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Matt and I, sort of the takeaway from Chimney Stax as we're looking forward and what's the next thing going to be. The biggest thing that I always say is like don't look for what's glamorous. Because what's glamorous or what's the flavor of the month, it usually sizzles out pretty quick. And
so if you don't look for what's glamorous, what do you look for?
I look for stable. I look for things that, like, it's, I want to do something that I don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel. I mean, like I did that with Chimney Stax. We found a product that was very esoteric and hadn't come to market.
Well, tell us the story of how you and Matt found the product.
All right, so yeah, I was meandering. So Matt was on a business trip to Austria looking to bring in a base layer line of clothing. His handlers on the trip took him to a winter market, and
like a winter, like an outdoor where you can get crafts and foods and local delicacies.
It's like a European Christmas market. You buy like the nesting dolls and ornaments and but anyways, there were these. They must have been in their 50s or 60s. There's a husband and wife, it looked like, in this wood hut, and a lineup that circled around the hut and then went down the way, and it was just must have been a 40-minute wait. So whatever it was, it must have been worth it. So Matt was standing there waiting in line, and as he sort of came to the front, he saw that they're making these sort of like rotisserie-baked bread, but they're rolling it in cinnamon sugar, and the smell was just everyone's just following their nose to this hut, and it's like a really interesting thing, the dog and pony show of how they make it, and there was a lot going for it. So he waited in line, paid his $4 or whatever they were charging for it, and got one, and he thought this was amazing. Matt was a big fan of beaver tails and tiny.
I was going to say, I went to school in Ottawa. And in Ottawa, a cinnamon sugary carbohydrate that's made at an outdoor market is a beaver tail.
It's a beaver tail.
Now, I don't want to slander your amazing product, but they seem to be in the same
wheelhouse.
Are they cousins?
The way that we would always describe it is you're going to have a similar flavor experience to a beaver tail, but you're not gonna put the weight on your thighs the same way. Ours are fresh baked rather than a float fried donut. Ours is a fresh baked bread rather than a deep fried batter. And that was sort of
All the good, less calories.
Indulge without overindulging was one of the buzzwords one of the taglines we were playing.
Was
with
that
for a while.
was that the key he heard in Europe? Is that why everyone lined up?
No, they've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of years there. They normally do it over like charcoal, and it actually comes from Transylvania, but we wanted to sort of stay away from that origin because it's too much Dracula. We didn't want to.
Because it is a real place. Just everyone forgets that.
I'm here to bake your bread. Like we didn't want to do anything like that.
Although it would have been a very, it hasn't hurt Count Chocula that much.
But we also realized that with the product that we were bringing in and the price point that we were going for, we were a notch up from a Carnival Eat sort of situation.
Because that's the other thing. When I take my kids to the winter fair, the winter carnival, there's the candy apples and the cotton candy, and they're all variations of a theme. But yours is really interesting because it doesn't seem that unhealthy.
And there's a bit of a wow factor, and there's a dog done to the size and scope of it and whatnot. But it's funny because we knew what the product was and we knew how we liked it, but what we didn't know is who is the actual market for this. And when it's two guys starting out with a thing. We didn't raise a tremendous amount of money to get this going. We bootstrapped this business pretty lean. So we weren't hiring like a marketing firm. We weren't going to do focus groups on what's our demographic.
Yeah, but hold on. But you did an MBA at Ryerson, and Ryerson is known globally as the home of entrepreneurship, experiential learning, people rolling up. I've just heard you identify really bad strategies, like all your effort in your focus group and bring in lots of money, and so you must have picked that up somewhere. Did your MBA help you in the early days, or was it more your experience working for yourself?
No, I think it's a good question. I think it was mixed, but what I really believe is that the MBA made us feel empowered that like we could do it. I don't need to do a focus group. We realized early on that like the food business is a tough business to get into. The margins are razor thin. Like you can get slaughtered. It's really easy to get hammered in food. Sure. So we also were very lucky that the food truck industry in Toronto and the GTA was really booming at the time. It's sort of fallen out of vogue now. I think if we were starting right now, like today in 2018, I don't know really how we would do it or if we would do it.
Places like Austin, places like LA, they have a 24/7, 12 months a year food truck business. People like follow Twitter and Instagram just to see where people are going to be.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, there's a great culture in sort of the southeastern U.S. I also have, it's actually funny, a lifelong friend of mine who moved out to Colorado. He opened a food truck. Totally in tandem with me without even, we weren't even speaking to each other. We both sort of like realized what the other was doing. He brought poutine to Colorado. And people, he blew their minds.
Yeah.
He's doing it really well and doing amazing. But like, even with the climate in Colorado, the restrictions were a lot looser. He could go wherever he wanted. It was 12 months a year. The barriers that we were experiencing in Toronto with regulation and stuff was just non-existent for them. So there were battles, but there was public interest, and so we realized that if we're going to figure out who the hell wants to eat this, a truck is a great way to get in front of a lot of different people.
Well, I want to talk about that, but I want to just talk about that in a minute. I want to stick to this idea. You told me why the food truck business wasn't good. All the problems with regulations and the margins and the fact that the recipes aren't proprietary and people can come at it different ways. But you didn't think that. Your future partner texts you, emails you, sends a video of you from Eastern Europe where he's having a vacation and says, we have to do this. And you, sooner rather than later, take a leap of faith. So you told me what was wrong with the idea. What was right with it? Did you come from a secret family of bakers and had infinite domain knowledge? Did you have a proprietary patent pending technology? Like, what made you, who had been doing videos and just came out of an MBA and is working in the corporate environment, take this leap of faith? What about the opportunity drew you?
Yeah, so while Matt was in Austria at this winter market, he ate this thing, he loved it. And he ends up taking like a 3-minute video of how they're doing it. They're juggling they're rolling out these things and snaking it around a wooden spindle and rolling it out and going into this wall-mounted oven where you're watching everything spin. The kids are like, completely dumbfounded by it and loving it and doe-eyed and taking it in. And so he sends me this video with one message. It just says, "We're doing this."
And you message back, okay?
Yeah, I said, okay.
What made you take that leap?
So
what
like
made you decide to totally get into a business, which I joked about your secret baking past, you have no relationship to, you have no knowledge of, you've never done a food truck, you've just graduated from an MBA, now, even though it is cost effective, it's still a cost. And
The
you're
cheapest
like,
MBA in North America, I believe, the most cost
It's
effective.
the most cost effective MBA in North America. So my question becomes, looking back, what was it that made you? Were you just having a bad day at the office and you just couldn't wait to get out of there?
No, okay, so I don't want to say it's ego, but I know people that they go to George Brown and they do a 2-year program and they come out and they call themselves chef whatever, and I know that there is a lot of knowledge and I'm not knocking these programs but like, as long as I can remember, I've eaten at least 3 times a day. I've prepared a lot of it myself, the majority of it myself. I kind of know what I like. I know what I don't like. I am by no means calling myself Chef Zach. But like,
but knowing what you like doesn't make you a food entrepreneur.
No,
you
but
go to a bar mitzvah and not be Jewish. Like, so how do you decide? Because you're an informed, intelligent observer. You're being asked to jump into a business. You know it'll be hard. You know it'll take all your time. Are you passionate about?
Well, let's say that after I replied to him, okay, he didn't come home the next day and we started a business. It was months and months and months before we got things going and found money and figured out how to make anything happen. So it was a lot of sitting with each other and figuring it out. So the first thing we did is we sort of sourced a recipe and like, what is this and what's it take, and we ended up in my kitchen. We took a bunch of paper towel rolls and covered them in tin foil because we didn't have, these are made in a custom oven, so we had to figure out a way to make it not in a custom oven so that we could figure out whether or not it was worth, buying the custom oven, importing things from Eastern Europe. There's only one manufacturer of these ovens that we found. There were 3, but the one swallowed up the other 2, so you're dealing with, it was not easy.
But your knowledge didn't have to come just out of Eastern Europe. You found someone with that knowledge in Windsor, did you not?
We did. So we started effing around in my kitchen and making these things and trying to figure it out. And once we sort of figured out how to make them, we started costing it. And the margin was very appealing.
The difference between what you could sell it for and what it cost you to make was good, even if you include the ingredients and the workers.
Before we figured out the labor, the one problem with our product is that it's very input heavy on your labor.
You need people.
You need people, and you need people that have a brain in their head. It's not just someone that's looking for 15 hours a week and just wants to be on autopilot. What I love about I'm gonna pump Beaver Tails tires a little bit here. What I love about Beaver Tails is their workflow is phenomenal, and the process of making a beaver tail is the input time and the input cost is dramatically lower than baking bread in front of people. It's a dough. You can sort of stretch it, you dry. You have to sort of time things and stuff, but it's very automated. Whereas with bread, if the temperature's a little warmer today, your dough's going to proof too quickly, and there's a lot of problem managing dough and managing the oven during, especially on a food truck, where if it's a little cold outside, it's going to make the bake time change. If it's warm outside, it's going to make the bake time change. If it's humid outside, your dough is going to turn to crap real quickly.
It's a lot more complicated than I would have thought.
It's a real pain compared. You realize why there's not a lot of mobile baking happening. So we had barriers, and there was a very steep learning curve, and I had to learn some things after the fact once decisions were made and things were in play. But from a pure just sort of like cost of goods, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
They're like
you spend penny to make dollars.
There's nothing in it.
Yeah.
It's flour, it's sugar, it's water, it's yeast, it's margarine,
and love,
and a little bit of salt. Yeah, and a lot of love and a lot of time and attention.
Okay.
But so when we're looking at what we could be retailing this for and what the cost of goods is, it just made a heck of a lot of sense very early on that this was worth taking a crack.
Or to use our MBA terms, the unit economics.
Yes.
How much you could make off of each of these stacks, chimney stacks, allowed you to say, well, if I made 10,000 of them, I could do this.
It made good sense.
So the idea of unit economics, the idea of minimum viable products, the idea of design thinking, those were things I would imagine you were exposed to some degree while in your MBA and exploring the startup world.
Exactly.
Many people get it wrong. They think that lean startup, design thinking, using an MVP is only for tech companies. And I argue that's the opposite.
I think it's for every business.
So to me, if I wanted to open a restaurant chain or a franchise chain of restaurants, I would start with a food cart. And then I would move to a food truck. And then once I had figured out my market, I knew where and why, or I realized I couldn't sell in certain months or certain cities, then I might have the proof needed that said, with this much money and this much labor, we can make this kind of thing. So now we should open stores. And I think that's huge. And I think people don't get that. They want to jump into 5 stores without even knowing how much they make off of each beaver tail, each chimney stack, each pair of shoes. How was your experience applying these kind of concepts like the lean startup to a real world business?
So, I mean, I think to a certain degree your hand is forced, where I wasn't going to raise $3 million to open up a bunch of locations for this fakakta product from Eastern Europe. Does anyone care? So right away you're running lean. How are you going to run lean? And so we realized that, like, you know, a lot of people say, like, oh, you got a food truck business. I said, no, I have a food business that started on a truck.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly how we played it. The truck was for proof of concept.
And for learning. I have to imagine, again, we don't have a long-term relationship, but I have to imagine every time someone walked up to that food truck to buy, you're like, is that my customer? Is that my customer persona? If everyone I see is over the age of 50, does that mean I should be going to seniors' homes? Were you doing the same sort of things that people do with MVPs?
1,000%. We were going to different events. We were looking at the profiles of the people that were coming in. We were making a lot of decisions based on that. We realized, and even location-based, from day to day, it's different. So we had we got a great deal with Live Nation, had a phenomenal relationship with them, wonderful people.
Because they throw events all over the country, right?
They own pretty much every, they have, sorry, not own, but I guess they have the exclusive rights to pretty much every live venue. So we were dealing with them for the Molson Amphitheater, which is I think now the Budweiser stage.
Because that makes sense, right? Because every night there's a new group of people who want a new experience, who are listening to rocker or rapper or song or maker. And so if you could set up like a little mobile stand there or a temporary stand. So take me through that.
So what we did is we made a deal with Live Nation that we sort of got a blanket rate to be at every event happening at Echo Beach and the amphitheater for the summer.
So two great locations.
We were just there. And like you think, great locations, tons of people, limited, captive audience. We love captive audiences. You can't go somewhere else. And Live Nation was really good about making sure that there was enough food for everybody, but not so much that that the people we couldn't earn. But then we started to notice that certain events brought out certain demographics, and certain demographics just really didn't care. And so we realized very quickly that a lot of shows that were bringing out younger crowds, they'll pay $7 for a $3 slice of pizza. Brand pizza, but they don't want to spend $12 on a brisket sandwich. So we stopped doing, the rock shows. We stopped doing.
But that's a huge learning, though, because
absolutely,
knowing the channels that don't work leaves you with the channels that do.
Exactly. And then in the meantime, we show up at like classic rock event, like at the Van Halen show or Steve Miller Band, and I've got the 50-something crowd
and the lineup
queuing up and being willing to wait a good amount of time,
and with the money,
and willing to pay, because they understand that you're getting real food that's made with a little bit of love, and we're not just slogging this stuff out, and it speaks for itself a little bit in respect to that. So we realized that we are not a Carnival Eats. We're not. I also don't have like 16 ingredient aioli sauces or anything like that. So I'm also not that type of, so we didn't do a lot of food truck rallies where people were looking for like interesting chefs that were mobile and doing really off the wall kind
Ethiopian
of stuff.
Fusion.
Yeah, exactly. Like Japanese
syrup.
Ethiopian fusion and this and that, and 75 ingredients per dish, and like amazing that people are doing that. I'm not criticizing it. It's just not us.
It's also not scalable.
I don't think so.
Or standardizable.
Yeah, exactly. So ours was really about designing menu options that were appealing, easy to execute, but like good flavor profiles, and when we made the jump from sweet to savory, hearty and filling. Like I didn't want it's a $12 brisket sandwich, but I would always say, you're not coming back and telling me after this that you're still hungry.
So keep walking me through your customer discovery, how this early exposure to the right and wrong sort of groups led to strategic decisions.
Yeah, so it was a lot of hit and miss. So after that year, we came back to Live Nation and we said, that was an awesome year. Thank you so much. give us the schedule for next year, and can we tell you can we cherry pick a little bit? And then they were like, yeah, of course, let's make that happen. And so we got to sort of cherry pick the events that we wanted. And, so year 0 was good, not great. Year 1 was really nice, and that sort of all flowed. In the first year and a half, we threw it all up against the wall. We're pulling 100-hour weeks. Just do what you got to do. Put the truck in front of as many people as we could. Every kind of event we could possibly think of, or that was available that we could get into. And then year 2, year 3, we really whittled it down, and it wasn't just about like if the truck is in the garage, we're losing money. No. Sometimes you lose money when the truck is out of the garage, and so we really had to start learning where to put the truck, what people we need to get in front of.
You double down on what works, you throw away what doesn't, and you start
exactly.
to
You start to realize that the catering is very good. You got better margins. You sort of know what you're into before. You can staff it properly. You're prepping right. You're not throwing product out at the end of it, so you don't have to worry about that type of cost, your spoilage or throwaway at the end.
So Steve Blank says a startup is a company, a novel organization that is looking for a repeatable, scalable, a sustainable business before running out of resources. So let's talk about resources.
Yeah.
You had 100 hours from you and 100 hours from your partner. I get that. But the truck still needs gas. The bread still needs yeast or flour or whatever you want to call it. What was funding like? I don't need to know the numbers, but did you and your partner put up some skin in the game and get involved? Did you do a friends and family round? Because with all due respect, I don't know that this is a $10 million venture capital business, but it is a repeatable, scalable business. You could see that after you mastered the unit economics, maybe it's franchisable. Like you can see that vision.
Right.
But then there's the reality. That the lights go off if you don't pay for them.
Day-to-day. Yeah, you can spend a lot of time building Excel spreadsheets and getting a great slide deck together and writing business plans and going around.
That doesn't put gas in the truck.
It doesn't put gas in the truck. It doesn't fix the radiator if there's a leak. It doesn't,
So how did you do that?
So there was a lot of sweat equity. You keep your overhead as low as you can, which means that you pull hours on the truck. I mean, I think one of the biggest things about entrepreneurship is trying to make sure you don't have an ego about it.
Okay.
And I don't care if it's a food business. I don't care if it's a tech business. I don't care if it's finance or whatever you're getting into. If you're expecting other people to run it for you, I think you're in trouble.
So just tying this together, it's a little paradoxical because earlier you said it was the ego that was hurting you post MBA to work for other people who were less talented as you. So you need some ego.
I don't want to say less talented, but
that were making decisions that you didn't agree with.
Not seeing eye to eye on.
There you go. They might have been right. You might have been right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now you can't have enough ego that you don't wash the truck yourself. You don't work there. But you have to have enough ego that you believe in yourself to deal with the thin spots. So how much ego is enough?
When you figure it out, let me know.
For you, how much is enough?
I think it's always a push and pull, and I think that mistakes are made all the time, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Tell me the biggest mistake you and your partner made.
I think we underpowered the wattage on the truck. And
is that a technical thing or is that a metaphor?
I think it seems like such a stupid thing.
So the truck didn't have enough power for the machines.
We didn't have enough power generation to really, once we started expanding beyond the suite, once the menu got bigger, now you needed to be able to keep meat hot at legal, of healthy temperatures. You started, and all of a sudden you're not just running this oven anymore. You're running an oven, and you're running a hot plate, and you're running a steam table, and you're running a grill, and you're or. So
why did you do that? Did you want to diversify the products to sell more?
Yeah.
Or did you? Okay.
So it all stemmed from the Steam Whistle Craft Beer Fest in the first winter of our operations.
So take us back. It's the first winter of operations. So we're at the festival.
Yeah. So we started operating. We started going. We were getting some good. The momentum was starting. And then we get into this Steam Whistle Craft Beer Fest in the middle of February, and we realize that, what really doesn't go well with beer is cinnamon and sugar bread. It just doesn't.
It's a good point. They don't see a lot of beaver tails sold on the Rideau Canal beside a beer truck.
Yeah, it doesn't go so great. So we started messing around, and so we realized that in order for the bread to bake properly, you needed a sugar or a fat on the outside of the bread to make it go. I'm not a baker, I'm not a chemist, I don't know, but when you take the dough and you roll it in a little bit of sugar, you put it in the oven, you're baking the bread initially, and then you sort of turn up the heat, and you sort of caramelize the sugar, and that sort of becomes sort of like the crust of the product. As soon as you take that sugar off, and you're just thinking like you're baking bread, it loses a lot. It's a really unappealing product on its own. Okay. So we needed something. So, cheese bread is awesome. So we started messing around with and then it became like, how fine a shred do you need and how much fat? Like the other thing we realized, if you use too good a cheddar cheese, like really like good artisanal, like super high fat cheese, it destroys the bread too. It becomes this oily, disgusting. So we actually had to pull it back.
So is the mistake not having the wattage in the truck or getting too complex?
Oh, no. Anyways, I'm rambling too long. So anyways, we ended up coming up with a cheese bread.
Cheese bread, okay.
We called it the cheesy Chimney Stax. Fantastic. We went to the Steam Whistle Craft Beer Fest. We launched it with both savory and sweet. The savory sold out in like an hour and a half, and then we started taking the sweet dough and rolling the sweet dough in cheddar cheese and just getting it out the door. And a similar thing happened in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We were at I think it was Mumford & Sons. They did like a limited engagement in this one venue, and it was huge. It was tens of thousands of people coming to a field in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and the only food there was like a little circle, half semicircle of food trucks. There were people that did not see the concert. They were lined up for hours and hours. It was probably the single best day of operations we have ever had on the truck, and it was me, Matt, and one other employee, completely understaffed and like just going as hard as we could. And we were doing, BLT sandwiches and stuff like that. But anyways, we ended up completely running out. And I remember a guy coming up and saying, like, I want that. I'm like, actually, dude, like, we're out of this. I go, all I got left are the sweet ones, but I've got bacon. And if you want, I'll throw bacon slices into the sweet one. And he goes, well, how much? I'm like, I don't know, $2, I'll give you 4 slices of bacon. He's like, that's amazing. And he turns around and is like, they'll put bacon on it for $2.
Because everything is better with bacon.
And then the crowd came again. Like, and we went right till the end of the show with that. So, but anyhow, once we sort of launched the cheesy line, the company kind of flipped for about a year and a half, 18 months. Savory became about 70 to 80% of our sales, and so from that, we're kind of like a sandwich place because you got this perfect tube.
Got to fill it with something.
Of cheese bread. It's like it's begging for to be a sandwich.
I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
Yeah, I do miss it. But all of a sudden, you got to start prepping fixins. So we started like really easy with like BLTs, turkey bacon sandwiches, but then we realized we wanted to sort of start pushing it and doing like more hot sandwiches, and so we did like pulled briskets and pulled pork and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, you got to be heating this stuff up and cooking it, and the initial appeal to this business was that the footprint was super small. We didn't need like a hood vent. We didn't need to be propane, so I didn't have to deal with like CVOR or TSSA. Like it was just a really easy way to get in. Like people would come, like other operators would, when they saw us, they'd be like, "Can I see your truck?" And I'd say, "Sure." They'd come onto the truck and they look around. They're like, "This truck is like empty." I'm like, "Yeah, we're really effing lean, man." And people kind of envied that about us. It was just, felt good to see people that had been in it for a couple of years sort of envying the fact that our operation was just really, really slick and easy to do and a great footprint. And it ended up helping us later on because when we did go to brick and mortar, we didn't need a 1,500 square foot store. Like we were looking at this, like this is a palace. What do I?
No, you need like a little.
I need a little
thing in the food court.
And again, like we're thinking about ourselves like revenue per square foot, and it's like I don't want to be paying $35 a square foot to store flour. Like give me a break. Like let's keep this lean. We can store flour at a commissary. And
we're gonna get to the storefronts, but first I want to ask you, what were you thinking when it came to Dragon's Den? Why did you put your hand up and say, I'll participate? What did you and your partner want to come away with that maybe you didn't have? Because I spent 5 seasons behind the scenes, and I know that entrepreneurs may come for cash, but they may also come for exposure, they may come for network, they may come to find a partner who knows more about franchising than they do. What was your thinking when you participated?
So it was a couple of different factors. So my business part, so Matt was very into the show, watched everything and really felt that he knew the panel and what they were looking for and how to present. So we were a couple of years in. It was now we plateaued with the truck. We sort of gone as far as we could. it's time to grow. It's time to get a brick and mortar going. And so we had a strategy, but we were going to have to do some fundraising to do it.
Okay.
So our financials were already in order. We already had our slide deck in order. And it was.
You knew how to run the business. You knew the levers. You knew the costs.
Exactly. And so we were already starting to talk with a couple of people that might
Want to
come in.
Okay.
And then I think it was my father actually that sent an email that Dragon's Den was hosting auditions, and it was like 2 weeks from that point. So I forwarded the email to Matt, and I'm like, do you want to do it? And like he wrote back, yes, we should do this.
It's exciting. It's fun. It's an interesting thing.
We've got it all together. And look, if nothing happens, it's a 7-minute spot on national television. Well, I mean, like who can buy that, right? Like, so let's give it a shot. So we went down to the CBC building, and you're in the atrium, and they've got like 10 tables with 2 producers each on it, and you go and do a pitch. And they say, yeah, just give us your pitch, and then we'll ask you some questions, and you get like 5 seconds into your pitch, and they cut you off, and they start sort of grilling you a little bit. And it was a good experience. We get a call 2 days later saying it was really good. We like you guys. We've done a lot of food trucks though, so I think we're gonna pass. Okay, thanks anyways. It did get us it did help us sort of like get our pitch together a little bit and whatnot. So we sort of left that and kept going after, looking to raise capital elsewhere. And then we were about to go to it wasn't an event. It wasn't like we were doing catering. It was just like I think we were street vending that day or something like that. So we were at the shop. We were getting ready to go. We get a phone call. It's like 8 a.m. We get a call. Hi, it's so-and-so from Dragon's Den. Listen, we're running ahead of schedule today, and we can do another shoot segment before lunch. And I kind of brought you guys up because I really like what you're doing and this and that. And we can do it. If you guys can be down here in an hour, we'll shoot the segment. The only thing is that we've done a lot of food trucks, so I don't want the truck here. We're going to pitch you guys as a food business, which is great, which is what we wanted anyways.
Because you wanted to evolve. The truck was just the minimum viable product.
Yeah, precisely. So they said, can you do the dog and pony show not on the truck? And we just, we'll be there in an hour. Hung up the phone, ripped the oven out of the truck.
I remember it sat on a table.
Yeah, made a batch of dough, packed it up, strapped it to a dolly, like threw it in the back of a car. Like I can't even tell you, like in 15 minutes we were on the road, hodgepodge, like grabbing ingredients, storing it in the back. We actually like prepped everything in like the craft services area at the CBC with the crap, like I'm looking like, what are these guys doing, and figuring it out. And so anyways, we got down there, we did it. Everybody was already on break when we went down. Hair and makeup and stuff was gone, so we were sitting there like brushing our hair and like stuff, getting ready to go. And then we get pulled aside and we do the pitch. And
now you get not 1, not 2, but 3 offers.
Yes.
Tell me how that felt. Tell me how that lined up with your greatest expectations. And tell me how you decided which of the 3 to go with.
All right. It was amazing. Well, I mean, it was very interesting because a couple of the offers that we got were coming from people that were kind of poo-pooing the idea initially, and then all of a sudden, when
the whole bread is dead thing that Michelle was focused on.
Yeah, exactly. And then she wants in. So it was that. I mean, like that also felt good because you sort of come out with something, and you say like, "This is what we do," and they're like, "Really?" And then you say, "Well, because this, and this, and here are some numbers," and then they go, "Oh, all right." So I mean, like, there's you're not your head's not totally up your tuchus, so that's a good thing. And then we get the offers, and so a couple of things. One of the reasons why there were a couple of reasons why I went with Joe. The most obvious is he gave us exactly what we asked for.
Everyone else wanted royalties or
the other
royalties.
The other two were royalty based. Yeah. The other 2 were royalty based. And a royalty scares me for a couple of reasons. So here's the education for the future entrepreneurs. A royalty comes off the top line, not off the bottom line. Mm-hmm. So if they're taking 6%, let's say I'm selling this for $1, mm-hmm. they're taking 6 cents off of that dollar sale. That's before I've paid the government their taxes. That's before I've paid my supplier for the ingredients. That's before I've paid
the out of work York
staff. I haven't paid my electricity
there.
yet. I haven't paid my VIG to be at this particular event yet. Like, it's right off the top. So you could actually be giving away
your margin,
a ton of money. That's 6%, and if you really start doing well, you could really be giving away a fortune.
And one of them was a royalty till you paid her back, but one of them was a royalty ad infinitum.
I think it was a 6%.
It was royalty. A 5% from Michelle and a 6%.
Like in perpetuity, I think it was, yeah. and God forbid you want to sell the business.
Because now this is going to make it stinky for anyone buying it because they
The
got to pay
royalty
6
doesn't
cents.
go away because I don't own it anymore.
And that's a
So if I'm
hard
going to sell
thing.
it to you, and oh, by the way, for the rest of your operations, this guy's getting, or this.
Who they may not see any value on. Now, were you surprised that the franchise master himself, Jim Tree Living? I mean, many people know Jim as Boston Pizza, but Mr. Lube and dozens of other franchises, he and his partner George really are experts at that. Did you think they were going to buy in? Was that who you were hoping for?
I don't want to knock Joe, but we were really, really expecting an offer from Jim.
I would have thought it would be in every Boston Pizza by Christmas. I saw this as the appetizer people didn't know they needed, or the desserts, whichever you call it.
I will share one piece from that experience because it didn't make it into the final edit of the show, and it was an interaction with Jim, and it was probably, from an ego standpoint, the best feeling that I got during that experience, and it made it a little bit easier to swallow him not making an offer. And basically, he was sort of sitting there with his notebook and writing down, and he sort of looked up and he goes, "You did X amount of revenue in 90 days? And we're like, yep. And he goes, "And you're both MBAs? Yeah." And he goes, "And you're working it yourselves?" And we're like, "Yeah." He goes, "You don't need a partner. You're going to need a loan in a year or two. And you call me when you need the loan. You guys are fine. You'll be just fine on your own." And
now I know why they edit that out.
yeah,
The same way
it doesn't get to the final point.
Yeah,
but tell me about feeling about sort of a validation of what we're doing. That felt amazing.
And people forget that. They forget that it is television, it is edited. They don't see people high-fiving you after. They don't see people in the green room saying, "Great job."
Right.
It just looks like this. But the same way they're not alone on the island in Survivor, these shows are a snippet of
Sure.
a bigger part of a reality.
Well, and the other thing is, like once we shook Joe's hand at the end of that, that wasn't a deal.
No, that's
that
an
was,
offer
that was
to
the end
treat.
of a TV segment. We had to go into due diligence, and they,
So tell me about that process. So people make that mistake. They think you shake deals, you pick up the check the next day. In fact, that's only what they call an offer to treat, an engagement. We'll discuss it further.
Right.
You go back and forth. Now, people don't realize, but less than 20% of the handshakes can turn into deals globally. Canada does much better because people tend to deliver, but it's not the same everywhere.
I don't know if CBC likes me to share the stat, but they said it to me a few times that 90% of the deals that happen on the show die in due diligence.
Yeah, because the entrepreneur embellished, the investor wasn't up for it. There's some new facts that
Or
come
there's
to
two
light.
sets of books.
There's all kinds of issues.
Oh, we did 300 grand in revenue. That's amazing. And then I look at the books. It costs you 600 grand to do that.
And that does happen.
Boy.
So what was your experience post-show like?
So, I don't know what happened in subsequent seasons, but Chimney Stax was the fastest deal ever to get done from Dragon's Den.
So post-show.
Our due diligence was about 2.5 months, which was
really fast.
Super fast. We wanted to grow. We needed the money to do it. It was a very aggressive timeline that we wanted to work with, and our sort of opinions, if Joe wanted to be a part of this, he'll see the value in it, and we'll get it going very quick. Our numbers were already prepped. We didn't have to start putting things together. We had a package that we were
So he was going to invest $125,000 for 25% of the company.
Exactly. And it's a sizable sum. I think if you look at Joe's portfolio, it's not a particularly sizable sum in his world. So I think that also helped things move quickly. But I think it had a lot to do with, we had a very clean presentation. We had very, very
So you took
good
his
numbers.
money, you went to deploy it, you went to grow it, and then I hear recently you've had a positive acquisition. Tell me about the time in between and how you get from one to the other.
So we went from a truck to a truck and 3 brick and mortars. So we got
With Joe's money.
with the help of Joe's money, a little bit more than just Joe's, but yes, Joe's money. Joe's money got us our Vaughan Mills location, which is a 364-day-a-year operation.
Now, was Joe able to be smart money? Because I know food isn't his business, but he's still a pretty savvy entrepreneur.
He is a savvy individual. He is a very well connected person. And not like in a superficial, like he knows wealthy people. He knows people that get stuff done. He knows fabricators. If we're going to build this thing out, put us in touch with a firm that's going to build this out in an aggressive timeline, so that we're not, like paying rent to be doing leasehold upgrades and stuff like that. Like I don't want to, we want to be generating, we want to be earning. So he was great with that. He was also, for a very busy man, he made himself quite available to us.
That's nice.
So if we sent an email, we would usually, if I didn't hear back from him that day, we'd hear from him within 24 hours. But he was usually a same-day responder. So that was good. And if we needed to get FaceTime with him, within a week. I think that's amazing. I think
considering the portfolio?
And to have someone on your sort of, as an owner and on your board and sort of providing mentorship and to have them.
Okay, so you have the trucks, you have the locations. Take me to how you and Eva's Chimney Stax, I got the correct name here.
Eva's Original Chimneys.
Eva's Original Chimneys get together.
So, it's a bit of an interesting story. Eva's opened up about a year and a bit after we started.
Had they seen you?
Oh yes, they actually sent us they reached out to us when they started operating. Anyways, I shouldn't get too much into it, but let's just say it was we were extremely competitive with each other.
So it was flattering because they're seeing the same opportunity you are.
Yeah, I guess I don't think at the time we felt particularly flattered. I don't have too big an ego to say it. Like, we felt threatened.
Absolutely.
Like you know, especially since we were only a year in. The first year was good, but there was a long way to go in the business. And after that first year, you realize how far you have to go. No matter how well thought out you think everything is, like, the learning curve on a new business is
so big,
exceedingly steep. And I don't think that's a food specific thing. I think that's just new enterprise is going to be tough. But we had our eyes on each other, and there was a lot of, it was also a very good motivation to work hard because you see that they're doing this, so we got to respond or be, you know, like it makes you do your best. In looking back, I'm grateful that they were there because it really, you know, when you're giving it 90%, they make you give it 110.
So I know that you're already, you're in the last part of this acquisition, so I don't want to get into too much detail. But what do you think comes next for you?
Oh, that's a great question. It's actually funny because people say what really did you take away from this? And am I in love with food? Am I going to do another food thing? But like, I got to tell you, the muscle that I enjoyed. I mean, like I did a lot of the operations. So I was HR, I was hiring and firing, I was workflow, I was figuring out ways to you know, keep this very lean even as we grew, and I call it the McDonald'sification of a product. I want to make sure that
commoditization, commercialization,
a Chimney Stax is a Chimney Stax is a Chimney Stax, regardless of day, location, time. I don't care if it's
a Big Mac in Turkey is the same as a Big Mac in Tel Aviv.
Exactly. I think that's hugely important, and that was a major factor. But the other part of the business that I loved was finding ways to grow, and a lot of that had to do with, I have to write a proposal to the Metro Toronto Convention Center as to why I should be a vendor on their list. So I was doing a lot of business writing. You know, when we were looking to raise funds, you're putting together spreadsheets and you're writing slide decks and doing that. And so I was doing a lot of business copywriting. And so I've been doing a lot of that now, for a lot of startups, but also for a lot of consultancy firms and things like that. I find that there's a shortage of cogent writing today. A lot of people have a lot of great skill. Like, I'm doing a lot of work right now where I'm working with people that are brilliant, and they you know, whether it's like they do deep data or they're phenomenal with statistics, and they can really harvest information and distill it down, but they are terrible at communicating that to anybody in a way that makes sense, or in a way that a client can understand from a consultancy firm, that this data, I can leverage this to my advantage. So I've been doing a lot of translating and from that. So sitting down with people doing brilliant things, figuring out how to say it in grade 12 English and passing that down the chain. And so I've been doing a lot of that. I don't know if that's going to keep going or not, but it's keeping me happy right now.
Keeps the wheels moving.
Keeps the wheels moving, and it also, like, after doing something like Chimney Stax, people start coming out of the woodwork because I think they've acknowledged that I'm someone that can get something done. I can run with an idea. I can grow something. So there's people coming out of the woodwork and bringing me ideas, and I'm unfortunately not at a stage right now where I can talk too in depth about it. But there's a couple of things coming down the pike right now that I'm hoping 2019 is going to be a really cool year and a really fun year. And excuse me, and kind of back to that hustle of 2014.
Well, thank you for sharing your story, your hustle, and your insights.
No problem.
Let's give Zach a hand. Thanks so much for
My
coming.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm Dr. Sean Wise. Thanks for watching The Naked Entrepreneur.